A midlife crisis is more than just a cultural stereotype. It's a real psychological struggle that can surface between the ages of 40 and 60. Often triggered by aging, loss, or unmet expectations, it can actually lead individuals to question their identity, make impulsive choices, or abruptly abandon long term commitments. While not officially classified yet as a mental illness, the emotional and relational fallout is very real, especially for the spouses and families left behind. This podcast gives voice to those living through the aftermath, exposing the hidden pain, and seeking accountability, healing, and understanding. Thank you for joining us today on MLC Bomb Drop and Beyond. The stories and events discussed in this podcast are for informational and entertainment purposes only and should not be considered legal, medical, or professional advice. Any names, locations, or identifying details have been changed to protect privacy. Any similarities to actual persons, living or dead, or real events are purely coincidental. The information presented on this podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be considered as professional advice. Always consult with a qualified expert regarding any decisions related to your specific situation. The views expressed by guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect the opinions of the host or the podcast creators. Hello, listeners. Today we have Kevin with us from Canada, and he is a left behind spouse. It's been about 2 years, and Kevin is going to tell us his story. So, Kevin, thanks for joining us today. And I'm just going to, and by the way, you guys, this is not his real name. This is the name he picked for today, and we'll go from there. And I'm going to hand it over to Kevin. Hey, thanks for joining
Hello.
us.
Oh, thank you.
So, I want to start with maybe how long you guys have been married and, start there.
Yeah, sure. We got married, it's a little over 26 years ago. And actually, sorry, a little over 27 years ago now. So, yeah, it's a long time. And, yeah, hard to believe. Hard to believe.
And do you guys have children?
Yes, we have two children. One is 24. She is home part-time. Um, and I have a son, and he goes to university. But again, he's here part-time. So,
Yeah.
and I also have my daughter's boyfriend. He lives with us also part-time. So I have a lot of kids in and out of the house all the time.
Oh, that's awesome.
No,
That's interesting. My marriage was 27 years. It seems to me like the magic number, you know? That's
yeah.
crazy.
Yeah, although
So
this happened around the
right,
25th.
at 25.
So yeah, yeah, yeah,
So, you wanna tell us what led up to what eventually became Bomb Drop?
yeah. So it was it's something that built up. Now looking at it in retrospect, it's something that built up over time. But I really wasn't sure what was going on with her. I mean, what caused it is probably the collapse of her business. I think that was the final um, nail in the coffin for our marriage. She was a very avoidant person. And I didn't realize what that was at the time, but now looking back, I can see that. And so when COVID hit, she had a business that was very, um, front facing with customers. She had an event planning business, and it basically went to zero during COVID, and her business collapsed into nothing. And so, she took out some government loans that she didn't tell me about, and she took out some grants and things like that. But she never told me about any of that stuff. And when it came time to pay it back, she had no money to pay it back. And I think that was the final, just it wasn't just that, but it was also the collapse. The collapse of her business also collapsed a lot of her social circle, right? All her customers, people she used to work with, and so on. Everything just gone, and I think that was the beginning of the end of our marriage. So,
Wow.
yeah, yeah, it was. It's there were other things too, but I think that was the final thing. She hid all that stuff from me, and when the government came knocking for the money that she owed them, she had no money to pay them back, and she had to tell me everything. So, and that was sort of around the same time as she, decided that she was leaving. So,
Wow. Did she exhibit
yeah.
other, symptoms of MLC?
Yes. She became very antisocial. She, kept to herself a lot more. If the kids and I were sitting at the dinner table, she would just leave all of a sudden and go sit in the corner on her phone. She didn't socialize a lot with people. There were a lot of there were definitely signs. I knew something was wrong with her. I didn't know what, right? So,
Yeah. And how did you guys, did your kids at the time notice too?
oh yeah, yep, yep, yep. She became very, yeah, she became a very short with them at times, and she just definitely didn't, what's the word? She wasn't as involved in their lives anymore.
Yeah, sort of
They noticed it.
self-isolating?
Yeah, they noticed that she was, um, what's the word I'm looking for? You know, she wasn't really paying attention when they were telling her something. Like they would tell her something and she'd go, "Oh," and then like 2 weeks later, she'd ask the same question, like, I told you that 2 weeks ago, Mom. And you could tell there was a difference. So,
Yeah. And, so was there one particular day, or how did your wife move out?
Um, the big bomb drop was, around the time of our anniversary. We were supposed to go uh, on a cruise, and we were, it was weird because she had been hesitating about booking it. And, I noticed something there was definitely wrong, but she was hesitating about booking it. And when we finally booked it, it ended up being almost last minute because we were running out of time to book something. There were less and less, availabilities and so on. But she was acting kind of strange around that. But then all of a sudden one night she said, "I can't go on the cruise." And I said, "What do you mean you can't go on the cruise?" And she goes, and then she started telling me about how, I don't think we're supposed to be together anymore. And, I love you, but I'm not in love with you. I think I need some space, from this marriage and from everything. And it just like that, boom, and, you could see there was something not quite right, but I didn't think it was that because she had also started a new job about, I'm going to say about 6 months prior. And, when she started that job, there's a lot of changes in your life, right? And so, she became a flight attendant. And so, she's flying, she's, meeting new people. And I understood that. I wasn't going to get mad at her for that because I knew there was a lot of change in her life. And I thought, well, just let her be, see what happens and let her go through whatever she's going through. I never dreamed in a million years she'd walk out the door, but that's what eventually happened. And
And Kevin, I would assume this cruise was to celebrate your 25th wedding anniversary?
yeah, yeah, that's it. Exactly. Yeah. And yeah, it was the most awkward 25th anniversary you can imagine because, we didn't go on the cruise. Like she had told me before already that we weren't going on the cruise. But I said, "Do you want to go out for dinner still? I'd like to go out for dinner." Being a normal person, you're trying to make her happy and, and find out what's wrong with her and try to get to the root of, what I could do to change, how she's feeling or what, if there was something I did or said. So I wanted to continue on with life, and I said, "Let's go out for dinner." And so we did, but it was a really awkward dinner. And yeah, anyway, it was just one of many things I tried to do at that time, to try and, make her happy and, to see that she doesn't need to leave. She doesn't need to go, find herself or have space or whatever, that, there's no reason for her to do that. But anyway.
Wow.
Hmm.
So was it shortly after that that she moved out?
It was a few months actually. It was very awkward in the house, and it was very awkward between us. Um, I kept trying. And then what happened was just before Christmas, um, she um, she said she didn't want to do Christmas presents, and like at all. And so I negotiated with her, and I said, well, we have to do stuff for the kids. You can't just leave the kids hanging like that. The kids knew it was weird, and she told the kids the same thing. And so anyway, we didn't do any Christmas gifts with her, but or like the two of us didn't do any Christmas gifts, but we still gave presents to the kids. So
Wow.
um, but it was basically the week after New Year's that she left. So she just I came home on the Friday after New Year's, and she said I'm leaving. So and she had told the kids before I got there, and she said I'm leaving, and I just need some time alone. I need some space. I'm going to go stay with a friend. And she did, but I found out a week or two later that she had already rented an apartment, and she already had plans in place to move out, and she had obviously planned to move out. She just said that as sort of an ease into what she was doing. So
How did the when she told the kids, what was that like? You weren't there, so you heard it.
I wasn't there, but they were stunned. They knew something was wrong with her, though. She had at the time she had a really bad eye infection, and sorry, it had kept coming back to her, and that eye infection, she entirely blamed on me. She said the stress of being here and the stress of being in this family and trying to please everybody. She says it's causing this, I talked to the doctor and it's causing my eye infection to get worse. And it's not going away because I'm here. I need to get away. And so she was telling the kids that kind of the story. And, and she just said, it's just time for me to, start over somewhere else. And she just left. So, the kids were pretty upset. My daughter was pretty angry at her, especially. My son didn't say much, but, like a typical boy doesn't say much. But my daughter was very visibly mad at her, and said, why aren't you working on your marriage? Why do you refuse to go to counseling? Why do you refuse to, try and work things out, and she was very angry at her for a long time after that. So,
So then you come home that day. She says she's moving
hmm
out. Brand new
hmm
year, you know, uh,
yeah,
starting off, I guess, 2024,
yeah,
right? And now it's just you and the kids at home.
yeah, yeah. And I made a decision at that time. Like I said, I told the kids I don't want anything to change. Everything is the same. We'll see what happened with mom, but she's got some problems to work on. And at the time, I didn't know, that she really did intend to leave and never come back again. Um, you know, my um, my entire thought process at the time was that I'm going to give her some space and some time. And I'd done some reading at the time as well that, sometimes people just need some time away to realize, what they've left behind. And I was wrong, there was no, she never ever wavered or ever, made any kind of, gave me any kind of impression that she was ever coming back. So,
At what point did
um,
you realize that maybe she's in a midlife crisis?
Oh, yeah, that's tough. I think it took a while because I had to do some reading to find out what was going on with her. The first thing that came up was uh, more of a hormonal thing, right? Because my daughter had said, she could be going through menopause, and maybe that's causing her to act irrationally. And I said, well, maybe that's it. I don't know. I'm willing to try anything. And so we went down that route. And so I made an appointment with the doctor just to let him know. Like, doctor obviously can't say anything one way or another, but he'll take what I say into consideration. So I told our family doctor of what happened, and he said, yeah, it's possible. So, he said, I'll keep that in mind next time I see her. I'll maybe ask her a few questions about, things, and and so on at sea. But nothing ever came of that, of course. And that wasn't the issue at all. In fact, she's still hasn't gone through menopause. So
Mm.
uh, yeah, but I forgot what your question was.
Oh, because now it's you and the kids at home,
I'm
and
sorry.
because at this point now it's you and the kids at home, and she's moved out, and then she's got her
Yep.
own apartment, and
Yep.
did she did she file for separation, file for divorce?
No, it took her a long time, she didn't file or she didn't motion to like I said I'll just leave everything. I said I was never going to be the one that files for separation or files for divorce. I was never going to be that person. If she wanted out, then she would have to do it. And so I just let it be. And for most of the summer, and yeah, for the entire winter and summer, I didn't hear anything. And then all of a sudden in September, I did hear something and her lawyer had contacted me. So, but I let it be. I just let it be. And, I thought, well, maybe, eventually she'll realize that she does want to come back. I mean, through that time, I had done a lot of reading and, I had my own ideas of what it might be, but I mean, I was pretty sure it was a midlife crisis and I also realized that she was an avoidant person. So everything that goes along with that, um, also played a big part in the end of our marriage. So
Mhm. And how about the kids? Once she moved out and had her own place, was she good about staying in contact with the kids?
no, initially not at all. She spent a lot of time by herself. I think she was doing a lot of she was drinking a lot and she was hanging around with a lot of single people. And my daughter actually really had a big falling out with her. I'm gonna say about 3 to 4 months after she left. Because she said, "I never hear from you. You've left, and every once in a while you peek your head in, and you don't seem that interested in what's going on with our lives." It kind of woke her up though because she really panicked at that time, and then started making a much more concerted effort to contact the kids every week or two. So she still doesn't talk to them every day or she is part of their daily lives, but she is better now about at least contacting them a couple of times a week usually, and she usually goes out with them if they're here, if they're in town. She'll go out with them, every couple of weeks kind of thing for lunch or for a coffee or whatever.
Oh,
So
good.
yeah, but yeah, initially she really did just disappear. So
Wow. And do you guys have much contact?
just about business stuff. Um, not really like nothing personal.
Mhm,
I don't want that. I mean, I went into therapy right after this happened and, my therapist suggested that I go no contact other than business stuff, texting back and forth or whatever. But, I really thought that that was best. And I think it was the best because it allowed me to detach from her.
mhm.
And I don't think I would have done that if I saw her all the time or if I was talking to her on any kind of personal level.
Yep.
I really did need to break away from her. So
Wow. So, so now it's been, I guess, almost 2 years going
yeah,
on. It'll be, going on 2 years.
yeah.
So how what's your, progress been now? I mean, do you know if she's in another relationship? Are you in another relationship? Can you talk about stuff like that? You know?
Yeah, for sure. I don't think she's seeing anybody, or I don't think she's in any kind of relationship. I don't think she's mentally able to right now anyway. She still isn't very well, I think. I get that impression still from things she says. I know she's still drinking a lot. Um, I don't get the impression that she's in a place for a relationship. I know she's lonely. I think she reaches out to, I think she tries as much to get involved with some of her new friends and things like that from what I hear. But again, I don't know any of her new friends. She broke away from all of our old friends. So I think socially she's just stuck in this new circle of new friends. She lives in a town about 20 minutes away, so she's not close by anymore either. So nobody sees her or hears about her anymore that we used to socialize with, or any of our old friends. She's just completely, broken away from those people. Um, so yeah, I think she's a little bit lonely, but I think she's trying to make the best do the best she can. And I know she works a lot of extra hours just to keep busy, and that's probably on purpose. So in terms of me, I have not entered into another relationship yet. I'm a little bit. I have gone out on a couple of dates with people who have been suggested to me that hey, I know this girl, and she's recently divorced. Why don't you go out with her? And I did go out on a couple of dates with a couple of different ladies, but it's so difficult. It's hard for me to, you know, to start again, and and I don't even know, I don't even know how to go about doing it, right? It's just one of those things where, you go out and it's a nice person and everything, but it wasn't an instant love connection. And I don't know if it should be or it shouldn't be, or, if it's something where you should go out with them a few times and see how you get along, or if there should be that instant attraction like there used to be when you were, 25, you saw someone in a bar and that instant attraction was the first thing, right? And so I don't know if those things are applicable anymore. So I'm trying to, figure that all out in my brain, but I don't really think I'm ready yet. So I think it's probably better that I just take it easy, and, but something comes along, that's great. And if it doesn't, that's okay too for the time being. So,
Well, I'm
yeah.
guessing you might still also, be in love with your wife.
Um, I will always love her, I think. I'm not mad at her. I understand what happened.
Mhm.
I'll always be in love with her, but I could never be married to her again. I could never be in a relationship with her because I know she's an avoidant person, and I know that'll end badly again. So I've read enough and listened to enough, and talked to my therapist enough to know that it's a really, 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 really bad idea, and I wouldn't do it. It's time to move on to a new chapter, and I'm very, very firm about that. Yeah.
Wow. And, you mentioned the, avoidant personality a few times, and was this, going through this, is that's when you got introduced to personality styles, attachment styles, avoidant, anxious, secure, all that?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So, both from this website, from the Facebook page, and from talking to my therapist, she discussed that, about 5, 6 months into our chat, because initially the chats were more about, getting us back together, and she's a marriage counselor, and so that started. But then she became more of my counselor, and so we talked about that, but we discussed attachment styles. And, as I did more reading about avoidant behavior and avoidant attachment, I realized that that's exactly what she is. And it was there from the very beginning. And I know she was abused as a child, and she didn't have a very good childhood. And I knew all that ahead of time. I just didn't know that that's something that lives with you or comes back to you later in life. And absolutely, that's what it is. So,
Wow.
yeah.
Much about her childhood abuse?
I never did. I should say, about 15 years ago, we were in counseling for a while, because she was having problems, sexually, just being close to me. And,
Oh,
and that in itself was a warning sign way back when. So we went through counseling, and things got a little bit better after the counseling. But what she had said during those sessions, and what actually caused her to push away from those sessions, was when we started talking about her childhood. And it didn't really occur to me at the time, because I thought she just didn't want to talk about it. Because it was just, it's one of those things that, when you talk about something like that, it obviously brings back bad memories, and it upsets her. And I thought, well, I'm not going to upset her. That's not what I want to do. But that's actually, when the marriage counselor was talking to us about that, she pushed away from, counseling altogether. So, and that was a real raw spot for her. So, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I had
Yep.
no idea that childhood trauma
Hmm.
have such an impact on one's adult life or,
Yep. Yeah.
I thought, "Okay, you're out of childhood. New chapter. Clean slate," you know?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
that's really sad because all these things are so connected. The avoidant
Yeah.
person, the childhood trauma,
Yeah.
whatever went through childhood, and, resulting in an avoidant personality, and now midlife crisis, and it's so sad because it becomes almost generational, and now your adult kids are witness to that, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the only thing, the good thing about it all is that, I know our kids had a good childhood. They were never abused. They were always listened to. We were very nurturing, and even my wife was very nurturing towards them. So I never ever, I don't have any worries about my kids. It's just, for her, obviously, I don't
Yeah,
think it'll ever change. And she's never going to go to counseling. She's never going to get help for that. So, I think like a lot of avoiding people, they'll just live the rest of their lives like that. So,
wow. And going forward, at least hopefully you guys can all be on the same page as kids get older, get married, have
yeah.
children, and stuff like that.
Yeah, I don't hold any grudge or any ill will towards her. I know what she is, and I know what happened to her, and I just have to. I've learned to accept it, and um, it's still upsetting. I still cry about it sometimes, but it's also one of those things where I you can cry about it all you want, but she's not going to change who she is, and
Mhm.
and it's just I'm just happy that the kids grew up in a great family setting, and it just didn't happen until they were adults. So
Yeah,
um,
that's true.
yeah, yeah.
So, do you have any, pointers for others that are going through this that might have just had the bomb drop yesterday or last week
Oh
or
gosh,
a few years in like yourself?
yeah. I mean, I guess you know you think it is the end of the world, and you think it is and it is a horrible thing. You can't. Um, you can't sugarcoat it anyway. It is horrible, but I think what I would say is that work on yourself. I think that is so important. Um, People said that right from the beginning. I remember people saying that right from the beginning, and I did do that, and it was the best thing I could have done. Um, Started counseling. And I realize that counseling is not affordable by everybody, but if you can afford it, or if you can find some way of getting it, get it, because it helps just to talk to somebody about it. Um, and really work on your own life, right? Whether it's your job or your kids, or your relationship with your kids, or your relationship with your friends. Strengthen those, and take care of yourself, right?
Mhm. So, really start
Really
focusing
important.
on yourself and other relationships.
What's that? Sorry.
Focusing on yourself and other relationships.
Yes, yeah, really important. My neighbors are such fantastic people. Um, they were there all the time, and they've never treated me any different because she's been gone. We used to do a lot of things together, and that's just the eight of us, and she's gone, but they still always invite me for dinner. I'm still part of their lives all the time. And, we still go on vacations together. And, they all went together as couples to, I can't remember where, like Costa Rica or something. And, they still invited me. I didn't go because I thought it would be awkward. It was a couple's sort of, trip, but it was really nice that they even asked, right? They said, why don't you come? And I said, well, it's a little awkward. But it's just nice to have those friends, and maybe I know I'm lucky because not everybody has that, but I mean, it's really important to make sure that you strengthen those ties, and stay in touch with those people, and it helps so much, because just getting through that first 6 months to a year is the hardest part. And, once you start to detach from that person, and once you realize you're going to be okay, I think then things get better slowly. But it's just that first 6 to 12 months was so hard. So,
Mhm.
mm,
Yeah, because 'cause you're going through what I just recently found out it's called ambiguous grief, you know?
okay.
Yeah, that's,
Sorry, and what's that?
you're grieving the loss of that person in your future. It's like it's almost like a death, but they're still walking around,
Yeah,
but,
yeah,
you know,
that's
and
exactly it. Yeah,
and
yeah.
what about
Um,
parents? Do you have in-laws or parents that are nearby or still in the picture?
so her parents are both passed away. Her brother lives, probably 6 hours away, so he's not around. And I still talk to her uncles and aunts. She kind of abandoned those people too, which is kind of sad. Like, she doesn't talk to them. I know she didn't go. They had the annual family Christmas, and they didn't invite us, but I know she didn't go either. So, so yeah, not much on that side. And my mother's still alive, and my sister's still alive, and they've been great too. It's just it's nice to have them always phone call away, and they're always checking in on me, which is great. So yeah, it's
Okay.
I know, I realize I've been lucky, and I realize that not everybody has those things, but anything that you do have, whether it's friends or family or cousins or whatever you have, reach out to them, and stay close to them, because they really do help. Anybody you can talk to, or, spend some time with, and, to get through what you're getting through. So,
Absolutely. Hey,
yeah.
did you have a period where you ever felt like you were walking on eggshells?
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah. The entire summer and fall before she sort of before and after, bomb drop, was pure eggshells. And the kids said that too. They even said, it always felt like we were walking on eggshells when we were around her, because, she'd get grumpy at times, and she'd like snap at people at times, or, she just seemed, very, sad or very angry. And, you were always like, hey, how are you doing? And you just didn't know which mom you were going to get, or which wife you were going to get anytime you walked into the room. And yeah, that was absolutely a big part of it. So, and I think that just goes with, I mean, where she was at mentally, right? She was just probably in her mind, she's thinking, how am I going to get out of here? And how am I going to, figure this out and figure out a new life, because I need to get out of here. And it felt like that all the time. Like she was, if I look back now, it seemed like she was plotting her escape from our family. And that was that period, where she was, you know, yeah, where you were walking on eggshells every time you were interacting with her, almost. So
Wow. Well, you
yeah,
certainly learned a lot about, this stage of life, you know?
yeah, yeah. Yeah, I think, I think that's an important part of healing, is just understanding, right? And my therapist said that to me. He said, the more you understand, the faster you can heal. Because if you understand what happened, then you're not, there's not always that wonder, like, what did I do? Or, am I somehow responsible? I feel no responsibility whatsoever anymore, because I understand where she was mentally. I understand what happened, and I understand why she did the things that she did, and because I understand all those things, I was able to heal better, I think. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
I'm so glad you mentioned that because just, yesterday, I dropped an episode
Hmm.
that, I don't know if you heard it, but our guest was a wife, 39 years old,
Uh-huh.
in midlife crisis. I don't know if you heard that episode.
No, I didn't.
Oh my god, okay, you gotta hear that. And,
Okay.
and she said that, she said the most important thing for the left behind spouses and for somebody in MLC, if they're uh, like she's very rational. She still had logic in her, some are completely in the fog and,
Yeah.
but she said the most important thing she thought was being aware of stages and
Yeah.
recognizing that it wasn't something the spouse could have prevented. Like, you couldn't have prevented it no matter what you did. Your
Yeah.
wife would go through this and
Yep.
she's in it, and you guys are just, going forward the best you can.
Yeah, yeah, no, it's absolutely true. Absolutely true. It really, it really does it does put your mind at ease. And because I did, I think a lot of us, left behind spouses, I think you blame yourself, right? Because if somebody leaves you, what did I do, right? And for months I felt like I did something wrong, or I could have done better, or maybe I should have listened to her that time, or whatever it is, because, they're always throwing, reasons as to why they're leaving at you. And then you start to think, did I really do that? Was I really a bad person? Am I not a lovable person? Did I do the wrong thing? Should I have said this? And you're questioning everything because they're just throwing stuff at you, right? And whether they're true or not, you realize after that, 90% of it was not true, but, you still question yourself. You know, over time you realize that, that's exactly what they were doing, right? They were
Mhm.
just, anyway.
All right. Well, is there anything else you'd like to share with our listeners today?
um, I guess just anybody who's going through this, that, it will get better. It's a process, and you're not going to feel better in a week or a month. It takes months and months and months of working on yourself, and getting, starting, and you're starting a new life, I think. And I think the best thing you can do is, once you realize that they're not coming back, or they're probably not coming back, is just to detach, and just to start working on yourself, and just, it's going to take time. There's just no, for many, many, many months, I thought this is never going to get better. You're up in the middle of the night crying and worrying, and,
Can't
am I
sleep.
going to be able to keep, sorry? Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, but it does get better, eventually. It's just you gotta put the work into yourself, and you gotta give it some time, right? And it's not easy. I didn't think I'd ever be here, but I am. And 2 years later, I feel better than I felt in a few years, actually. I understand what happened. I understand myself better, and my new, stronger relationships with friends and family are, fantastic. So it's
Yeah.
all good. So
You
yeah,
can almost be more authentic. No, your home is an eggshell-free zone.
it is. It is. And you could talk freely without worrying about anything. We have a lot, I have a lot of fun with the kids. I'm closer to them than ever. And
And
yeah,
these are great
it's,
ages, you know?
what's that?
These are great
What's that?
ages when they're in their
Oh
20s,
yeah.
it is
Yeah.
so fun.
You can do anything with them. You can go anywhere with them, and you can do anything with them, and they still want to do stuff with me. They don't mind hanging around with their old dads, so
That's awesome.
at least sometimes.
Hey, when people say work on yourself, sometimes we just don't know what that means. So I think you did
Hmm.
mention counseling. Are there any other things, like do you work out? You have a really strong support group, so I guess that's a really important thing.
Yeah.
Fine.
Yeah, I work out. I make sure I work out 3 or 4 times a week. It's scheduled. It's not flexible. Like I go on those 3 or 4 times a week. That's definitely there. And it's just little things. Like, if someone's having a conversation with you, put down your phone and be present, right? Listen to people. If the kids are, telling you something, it's not that important. Well, make it important, because those little things are noticed by other people, right? If you're not listening, or if you're half paying attention, it's noticed. You're a lot closer to your friends and to your family and to your kids if you listen to them and you have conversations with them and you really, engage, right? And I think a lot of us, because we're always on our phones or we're worried about what's happening or whatever, you're not present. And I think that that's really important too,
Yeah, I
because I
love
know
that.
my wife. I think my wife is not there, and the kids say it all the time too. I told mom this like 3 weeks ago, and she's like asking me the same thing again, right? And it's like, yeah, because she's not listening, right? So I try. It's hard to remember everybody's name and everything that's going on with everybody, but you try, right?
Well, you just make a nickname for them or call them all the same thing.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly.
Okay, good. I like that. Okay, so counseling, working out, scheduling it, and sticking to it, support groups, and being present. You know what? That's the first time actually anybody said that or that I thought of that as in that. Mm,
Yeah, I don't know whether that's necessarily going to help you, but I think it helps your relationships.
yeah,
And I think in this age of cell phones and distractions, I think it's kind of been lost that people just sit and have conversations or just talk. And that's why I get, if you drive places with your kids, you can have some really good conversations because everyone's sort of sitting in one spot. They can't go anywhere, right? And
yep.
you don't have a lot to do, so then you have some really good conversations in the car. So and my son's working in my office this summer, so we go to work together every day, so we have some really good conversations on the way to work and on the way home, and so it's fantastic. I love it. So
Aw, Kevin, that's awesome. That is awesome.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. I think everybody, it's great to hear your story, how you got through this in 2 years, pretty much unscathed. And, I guess your divorce will be final pretty soon.
Yeah, it's probably another 2 or 3 months at the most. It's the paperwork's all been submitted. I'm not sure how long it all takes, and
Mhm.
the lawyers aren't overly communicative, but it is in process, and yeah, I think it'll feel good once it's all done. So
Yeah.
I'll really be able to move on. But I think for the most part, the legal separation part of it is done, and I bought her out on the house, and so the house is mine. The kids are here, and it still feels like a family, and that's more than I could have asked for. So
Absolutely. Absolutely.
yeah, yeah.
Uh,
So
well,
really
thank you so
happy.
much. And I'm going to sign us off here. So, all right. Thanks again, Kevin. Thanks for joining us today.
All right, thank you.
Wow, that was great to hear from Kevin today. And it's so encouraging to see somebody at just 2 years and how well he's doing. Um, so I want to give you some resources. He mentioned how important, he felt like being aware of the stages is for him. So check out the book called um, The Eight Stages of a Midlife Crisis. It's by Heart's Blessing. Again, it's called The Eight Stages of a Midlife Crisis by Heart's Blessing. And then also you can check out The Hero's Spouse online for that 2-minute quiz on to see if somebody you know is in a midlife crisis. And also Lori McDermott's website and YouTube videos, thewifeexpert.com. So thanks again, Kevin. And it's just so encouraging to see how well he's doing just 2 years in. Thanks again, you guys, for tuning in to Midlife Crisis Bomb Drop and Beyond. We have reached nearly 10,000 downloads. We have hundreds of subscribers, if not over 1,000. You guys, forward moving spouses, you are not alone. Left behind spouses, you are not alone. Those in crisis, you are certainly not alone. This is just crazy how epidemic this has become. I have a waiting list now of people from around the world that I'm trying to get to. And if you've been through a midlife crisis or been impacted by someone else's and you want to share your story, I'd love to hear from you. Hang in there, you guys. I will get to all of you. Please reach out to me at mlcbombdrop@gmail.com. and visit us on Facebook and Instagram, MLC Bomb Drop. And just remember, your voice matters. Your story could be the one that helps someone else feel seen. It could help someone else feel heard. And it will help somebody else feel understood. You are not alone, no matter where you are in your journey. If the bomb was just dropped, the earthquake just happened, if you are 7 or 8 years in and you're coming out of starting to wake up and awaken to this, um, you are not alone. It's sad that this is epidemic, but we're here to provide support. So until next time, take care and live authentically each and every day. Thanks again, you guys.